listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive, critical lenses in the episode for Friday, August 2nd, 2024. My God, 2024 is barreling towards its end.
It's defeat.
It is defeat. That's an episode title. But we are here in the face of defeat, as we always are, because we are heroes. And we have taken a week off. I was traveling. I was very far away from where I live. In fact, I was on the East Coast of the United States. And now I'm back. And that's what matters.
Yeah, so we can actually do this thing. So we're going to do the thing we do.
What is the thing we do? The thing we do, or at least when we have nothing else to talk about, is a week in geek, which is what we're here to do this week. And so, Andrew, what was your week in geek this week?
So my week in geek, there's actually a few things I could talk about. I want to actually talk about the one that I think is the most interesting, is I finished watching Star Trek Prodigy Season 2.
Oh, wow. Okay. Finally released on Netflix.
The second season of the Nickelodeon Paramount joint Star Trek Prodigy. That was
ill-fated, I would also use to describe it.
Yeah, just kicked off of Paramount Plus, and then it's apparently sold to Netflix for its second season. It's an animated show. It kind of targeted kind of a younger audience. And I've talked about the first season and how much I actually ended up enjoying it. I think it's a different Star Trek experience, but it's one that it's still like, essentially this group of misfit kids who find this kind of abandoned starship with a hologram of Catherine Janeway, who basically they set off, and it's kind of like
part of the premise.
That's the original premise.
That's awesome.
And it's basically like they're slowly kind of growing into the idea of being like, yeah, we're into this Starfleet thing because this hologram is going to teach us. And that's kind of the first season. The second season is a bit of a gear shift because by the end of the first season, they've actually returned to Federation space.
Okay.
And they've solved whatever the crisis was, and now there's new crises. And the second season kind of takes a more, because now they're actually with Admiral Janeway aboard her starship, the USS Voyager 2 or A or whatever. And of course she has her own crew, and they're going on these, and they kind of do adventures and stuff.
So this is kind of within the time frame of TNG, DS9, and obviously Voyager. Or I guess post-Voyager.
It's post-Voyager. And actually, that's the one thing I'll probably spend a lot of time talking about because of the ending. So when Star Trek Prodigy actually started, they never said when it took place, but within the first couple episodes, they reveal that this ship that they found, the Protostar, had been captained by one Captain Chakotay.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And so it kind of created this uncertainty, except that the ship had been lost in this place that they found it for many years.
Yeah.
So it created, there's some questions of like, when does this show take place? And eventually there's revealed to be that there's actually some time travel shenanigans to it.
Of course.
You can't do a Star Trek without
From
time
the
travel.
makers of Star Trek Discovery.
The joke is, Star Trek Voyager, 1 out of 6 episodes ends with time travel resetting it to it not having happened.
Right.
So that's kind of what the show's got as some of its premise. So it's always had that it takes place after Voyager, but we don't necessarily know when. Now, the reason why it's interesting is when the show ends, but I want to talk about that as like the last thing. So it's a show
spoilers.
where basically, they get this ship back to the Federation at the end of season 1. Stuff happens. They save the day. They now basically are going to see if they can rescue Chakotay. Like, hey, where did he go? We should find him and rescue him.
Right.
And of course, there's some time travel shenanigans that immediately manifest, and it gets pretty over the top. Pretty quickly. I'll say that as a show, this season 2 was much less the kids show that the first one felt it was a bunch of kids that basically find this ship and are learning Starfleet. This one is like they're still not old enough to be in Starfleet, but like shit's a bit darker in season 2.
They're unshackled from the from the oppression that is Paramount Plus.
No, because it had actually been mostly developed with the intention that it was going to be on Paramount Plus. It wasn't,
interesting.
Like, because when Paramount Plus dumped them, they're like, well, we're almost done with season 2. Like, yikes. So it's but I think it was a fun show. Like, there's more Voyager stuff. Kate Mulgrew returns now in the role of Admiral Janeway, and actually Hologram Janeway. Robert Beltran returns as Chakotay. Robert Picardo is in it as the Doctor. We also have some new folks. There's also one very, very guest star that's introduced at the end of kind of the first half of the season.
Okay.
That I don't want to reveal, but I will. So listeners, if you don't want to know who it is, earmuffs.
Skip ahead 10 seconds.
But it is Will Wheaton. Does appear
Doctor Who.
Yes, as a Time Lord. So it's which of course just ties back to the time travel shenanigans that I already said happened. So I thought it was a fun show. They do some weird stuff. It's I think the characters that they had for the show are interesting. We see them and they're all like kind of like, some of them are things we know, some things are creatures we haven't seen. One of the characters actually, I would say, and I think I may have talked about this in the last time I talked about the show. It's a cast of like 5 characters. There's a one guy, another guy, another guy. One of the characters is actually Rock. She is this big rock person. Which is funny because in the first episode, she just makes all these kind of scary sounding noises because they can't understand her. And then as soon as they get the universal translator, it's like a young girl.
Okay,
but she's actually, she's kind of like, she ends up being like the sciencey engineering person.
Nice.
Of the team. And I will say that she has, I think one of the episodes in the first season, I would say is one of the standout episodes of the show, which is it's about the ship is trapped in a time hoo-ha, a temporal. Everyone's kind of trapped in different time frames and stuff, and she's the one that basically moves between them because I think the premise is she's essentially ageless because she's a rock.
Fair.
But she has a lot of, there's a lot of fun stuff they do with her. Because she's kind of like, she's this engineering person and sciencey person who's just so excited about everything that they do, right? We're going to go do that engineering thing, that sciencing. And it's more the science officer kind of thing. But I actually, it's always like, I get excited when they have these episodes with her. The whole set of characters is interesting. They also introduce a new character that kind of joins the group, a Vulcan cadet, suspiciously named Majel. And boy, when I first said her name, I'm like, boy, that name sounds familiar. Like, oh, okay. All right, Majel. Majel. Tell me more about what you're doing. I would say it is a fun show. I do recommend it. It's on Netflix. 20 episodes per season, so it's actually like 4 seasons, right?
Yeah, no joke.
They even have there's a break at the end in the halfways between each season, so it does actually feel like it sells kind of like four of them.
Did they drop the entire season at once?
They did, yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. The one thing I find fascinating though is we talked about where it fits in the continuity. They place it explicitly in the time frame in like the last 10 minutes of the last episode.
All right.
Because you had this. They've gone to Starfleet Academy finally. They're doing their thing. Everything's happy, and Admiral Janeway basically retires. She's like, I'm gonna go start that farm I always dreamed about, and then they have basically the attack on Mars. For anyone that knows Star Trek, the attack on Mars is something that they started promoting leading up to season 1 of Picard. Where basically there's an attack at Utopia Planitia on Mars. And it's revealed to be the synths have gone rogue and basically attack. And it's what leads to the banning of synthetic life, and that's what leads into Star Trek Picard season 1. In fact, Star Trek Picard season 1 spends the first episode or two talking about the Mars attack and how has changed the Federation.
Jesus. Okay, I thought I just had to watch I had to finish TNG, and then I had to watch Voyager up until 7 and 9 shows up before I could watch Picard. But now I got to watch 2 seasons of Prodigy.
No. In fact, no. Prodigy is definitely a watch afterwards because there's also a massive spoiler for Star Trek Picard season 3.
Of course.
But the weirdest thing is that like they show that and it's almost like, and it changes the tenor of the end of the episode, of the end of the series, right?
Really?
That, like, oh shit, everything goes well because they'd already talked about like, hey, this Federation's already stretched thin because they're helping with the evacuation of Romulus. Mm-hmm. Or of the Romulan refugees, which is basically that's the explosion of Romulus that happens, or the destruction of Romulus that happens in the fucking Star Trek movie.
The reboot movie,
right? But that destruction of Romulus happens in the main timeline.
Yeah.
So they're talking about that. So it's the idea that like, wow, the Federation becomes so strapped after the destruction of the shipyard
because it's the destruction of Romulus that causes the timey-wimey bullshit in the reboot,
right?
And then,
but then after that later is when the it's essentially a terrorist attack on Mars. Mm-hmm. That kind of like sets everything into like this lockdown, which they show. Like again, they're basically like, hey, Starfleet Academy shut down for now. This has gone like all this stuff has changed. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing in the last 5 minutes of this children's show? And it kind of it ends with them like, hey, you guys, you're going to take this ship that we had commissioned that is not going to be used because it's an exploration ship. And you're going to go explore because the Federation isn't doing that anymore.
Wow.
It's such a weird gear shift. I mean, I thought like as a Star Trek person, it is just kind of like, oh yeah, because honestly, that is kind of where Picard starts with like the Federation has changed, right? Yeah. And this is basically telling you, yes, you just saw the start of that change.
Okay,
so it's just a weird thing though to end the show on. Right. I mean, granted, they could keep doing the show now, and it would just be these kids on their ship bebopping around the galaxy just doing the Starfleet mission with no parental guidance,
As originally, promoted as like a show for maybe preteens or teens, if not younger. And like, hey, now you're ready to be introduced to Star Trek continuity. Like, that seems dangerous.
So it was just such a weird end of the show, which again, I'm not complaining. If this is the only Star Trek I watched, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is like, you just dropped this bomb on me literally dropping a bomb and they're like, and show complete. And like,
you dropped the bomb on
no,
me.
not complete. So I will say that it's one of those things that like, because the attack on Mars is only featured in, I think there's some shots of it in Picard, and then there's also some short treks they made to promote Picard. They actually have stuff there too.
Interesting.
So it is this weird thing where like this is now another part. Like you could make like a compilation of stuff about the terrorist attack on Mars, and you now have it across these 3 shows basically.
That's wild.
So yeah.
So I'm not going to ask you how it ends, aside from the fact, the sort of metatextual fact of like, do they set it up for a season 3, or are they kind of setting up as like, yeah, this is, if we're lucky, the best we've got.
It's an open-ended like, so because season 1 kind of ends with like, oh, where are they going to go? Because spoiler for season 1, the ship gets destroyed. So season 2 now ends with them, hey, there's this new ship that we were building that was going to be a replacement for that first one. How about you guys can just take it out because Starfleet's essentially decommissioned it. And, Admiral Janeway pulled some strings, which I love this. That's actually what she says. I pulled some strings at Starfleet Command. Like, motherfucker, you don't pull strings and get a ship like with an experimental warp drive thing. Like, you don't just like, pulled some strings. Like, shit, lady, you have blackmail on someone. You are holding something over some admiral's head.
She can do anything she wants.
She's got dirt on somebody because she just secreted a whole starship out of mothballs.
I've seen the Next Generation. Admirals in Starfleet can be blackmailed. That's all I know.
Well, actually, the one interesting character they also bring back for season 2 is Ronnie Cox.
Really?
Who portrays Admiral Jellicoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, that kind of that asshole serious captain guy is now an asshole serious admiral, right?
Well, yes, they did. So I guess I was asking that question more in the sense of like, ostensibly they created season 2 under the auspice that this is airing on Paramount Plus. Is there any indication that they kind of maybe did some rewriting, recompiling of the CG footage to acknowledge their fateful move from Paramount to Netflix? Or I guess if you have any behind the scenes knowledge of like how far along they were in making season 2, does it feel like they brought it to an end if they needed to, or are they really banking on viewership on Netflix to continue it to finish the story in season 3?
No, I think the story is, if they did a season 3, it would be a new narrative. It would be more episodic.
Okay.
Like it's just them exploring the galaxy. It very much is. The show ended if it needed to end, but they can make more if they want to. Yeah, very much so. Like it's not like there's no cliffhanger. Like season 1 kind of ended with like, well, they got back, but like, gosh, what happened in getting back? They don't have the like, I guess it's them getting ready to go to Starfleet Academy is how season 1 could have ended. And season 2 now is like, hey, well, they've kind of got a ship and they're to go do explores. Okay, fun. There's no like looming, but what about the unanswered whatever? Like, no, none of that.
With that in mind, not to like kind of shift gears here for a minute, but like San Diego Comic-Con just happened, and during that time
they announced a new series for
a new series, but also the new Star Trek movie.
New movie. No, they apparently they talked about a new show in the style of Parks and Rec.
Okay,
like a workplace comedy, mockumentary. Where like it's going to be like, Starfleet Medical or some shit. And it's just like,
that's basically what Lower Decks is without the interview sections, right?
It's going to be a live action apparently. Anyway,
okay,
but they talked, and also they dropped the trailer for Section 31,
right? Which
is the movie that stars Michelle Yeoh reprising one of her characters from Star Trek Discovery, Philippa Georgiou.
Any thoughts on the trailer? Expectations?
I mean, it is. I would say the one thing is it definitely feels like they are trying to do different things with Star Trek, which I think is. I mean, you can't have 7 of the same show. Like using the world you have and doing different things with it. I mean, I would say that it has a certain quality like Star Wars, where you have a whole world you can do stuff with. Except that Star Wars still, I think, struggles with finding a voice in things, right? Like if it's not a fucking a Skywalker story, or if it's not, like, or whatever. Like, I mean, I think Andor, I think they kind of hit gold with, but I think they still are not finding their footing. All they seem to be able to do is big, what if we just brought characters from another big Star Wars into a new Star Wars? Whereas Star Trek, I think most of the Star Trek material has been new characters. They'll have characters and concepts from the other shows come in, but like Lower Decks sold on its own. I think Discovery initially sold on its own. Strange New Worlds sold on this. I mean, on the original pilot, really.
Basically, yeah.
But, Deep Space Nine, Voyager they had a send-off from another show, but they were their own thing. It wasn't just like, I mean, Picard is the only real legacy show they've done.
Like where it's like, let's
just straight up sequel. So I think
season 3,
them doing more of this, like, around the Star Trek in 80 days, like, sure, and I mean, I've like the fact that they have a Starfleet Academy show that's also in development, and you could see that would be, they can do it. They can have good concepts and stuff and just set it in the Star Trek world, and so Section 31 is a very different looking show. I mean, first of all, it's a movie. Yeah, it's a movie. It's Michelle Yeoh. It is kind of like a rogues gallery. Right? She's basically a villain of sorts, and it is them doing questionable things, right? but it is, I think it's this opportunity to kind of see a side to, because they've done, Deep Space Nine occasionally would show other things, the other side of the world, not just the Federation side, but Star Trek Picard actually did quite a bit of, here are places outside of the Federation, and what does that look like? Discovery did a little bit of it as well, especially in later seasons when the Federation kind of collapsed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Voyager was kind of all about that too.
Well, but in a very different way that
it was still taking place on a Federation ship.
But it was also like so far away that we didn't see like what are these places we talk about that isn't just, Earth, right? Like you talk about these places, like what's that look like? An extended look at these places. And Section 31 does seem to be kind of that, like we're going to see this kind of underbelly of this universe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll watch. Like Michelle Yeoh is great, and the character she's playing, she played that character for what 2.5 seasons of Discovery, basically the back half of season 1 and then seasons 2 and 3. So it's an interesting character. I think it's a fun character. It's not your standard character. So I'm excited to see what she does.
I guess I wonder where you're especially after seeing the trailer. You haven't seen the movie yet, obviously. I don't think we have. I mean, we've been around for 10 years. We should have some inside status somewhere, but we don't. But like, I guess the question I have is like, how skeptical, I guess, are you of it being a movie rather than either a series, a limited series, mini-series kind of thing? Because Star Trek generally is rooted in sort of a series-based
I don't want
structure.
more than a very small amount of this.
Interesting. Of the character and her story?
Just of the premise of Section 31.
Sure. Okay.
You haven't gotten to the formal introduction of Section 31.
I am completely ignorant of everything going on.
I mean, you would have, they were part of the story of Star Trek Into Darkness, but it was something that if you didn't realize what they were talking about,
my
it would
second
go right over
favorite
your
Star Trek story ever.
Yeah. But yeah, Section 31 is introduced in the season 6 of Deep Space Nine, and without spoiling too much fun, there's not spoiling. They're basically
go watch Star Trek Into Darkness, everybody, if you want to have fun.
They're basically the secret police or whatever. They're the Obsidian Order or the Tal Shiar of the Federation.
Or the CIA, sure.
Well, it's more like the NSA. Like
sure.
Or the whatever. It's the CIA that no one knows even exists. And that's the whole premise that like, oh no, we do the things the Federation isn't willing to do for the good of the Federation, right? That's kind of the premise, which is why this movie, if you see the trailer, it looks like, oh, they're doing bad shit. Like, so, okay, there's something interesting there because, it's a one-off. I don't want to see 12 episodes of them just like killing people mercilessly for the Federation, right? That's not what I want to see. But it's a one-off movie. It could be interesting, right? What are they going to do with it? They're not going to drag the story on, and they're probably going to like part of the Section 31 story has always been confronting the fact that it is absolutely antithetical to the Federation, right? This like we have secret police and shit that like disappear people. Except, wait a second, we're the fucking Federation, right? I mean, that's actually one of the things you find out is like in general, when people in Star Trek proper find out about it, their first response is, "We shouldn't have this." And they're like, well, no, yeah, we don't have it. Like, well, no, you do. You're out there doing the secret shit. So that is, I think, that's what I think I'd like to see that maybe this movie kind of addresses. Like when they wanted to do a TV show, I was actually very skeptical of, I can't imagine this being a show that's going to feel like Star Trek, right? You're going to run out of gas on that story pretty quick. Like, oh, look, we just murdered 7 Klingons. Like, oh, we just assassinated the Chancellor of the High Council. Like, oh, we just pushed a bunch of Andorians into a fucking well. Like, what is this?
Yeah. Gene Roddenberry is rolling in his grave.
Right. And that's how it's always been used in stories, is this thing of like, wait a second, how is this even a thing? Like, this is the opposite of who we're supposed to be. So I think as a one-off movie, they can have that, and hopefully that story goes somewhere meaningful. Like, oh shit, you're right. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this.
And in the interest of Paramount Plus, like hopefully setting up maybe a season of a show or setting up a new series. Because that one thing they've done really well is kind of have that continuity and the contiguity, is that the word, of the shows they're producing. And as we've talked about before, kind of where Star Trek is now after the visible struggles that Paramount Plus has been having, and sort of kind of the paring down of available Star Trek and new Star Trek. It would be cool to see it pointing the franchise in a new viable direction. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And
I mean, with that kind of like, the dark side of Starfleet, and then Star Trek Prodigy ending up being basically a sequel to Voyager of all things. Star Trek's in an interesting place right now. So,
yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my Week in Geek. Dan, what about you?
I want to talk. I have a couple things I could talk about. I'm not going to spend too much time on either because we're
out of time.
One, I don't think I could talk about very much due to spoilers. The other one I can't talk about very much because due to just it's so fresh in my mind that I really haven't formulated my thoughts, and I haven't seen all that there is to offer. And we'll talk about that one first. I've been playing a new video game called Arranger, which is produced or was developed by a company called Furniture and Mattress. And it's a small team built around people that have worked on games like Celeste and Guacamelee and Braid, creating a new puzzle game that is absolutely charming and ingenious in how it builds its puzzles and the world that kind of fits around its puzzles. If I were to say anything, it kind of reminds me of like a mixture of Braid, I guess mostly in terms of aesthetics, and then something like Bastion a little bit. Sort of post-apocalyptic, but it's more like, it's less Mad Max and more never-ending story, kind of more fantastical kind of thing. Basically, it's a world... you play a character who is living in this sort of town that is protected from an oppressive world outside, and basically the world outside of this town is infected by, I think they call it the stasis or the static, where things are immobile. And your character came from the outside, and after spending years inside this protected town, desires to find her origins and wander back out into that dangerous world. The story, I think, is actually the least interesting part of it, and perhaps because it's well done enough. It's a bit on the nose. Subtlety is not its strength. The strength of this game is in the puzzle aspect of it and the mechanic it's built around. Because, geez, I haven't even thought about this beforehand. How do I explain this? It's a game based around kind of a grid system where you as a character move around from square to square, but the world kind of moves around you instead of you moving around the world. Oh man, how do I explain this? First, I should say, go look it up, watch some videos about it, because it really redefines how traversal works, especially in a top-down RPG kind of setting. And the puzzles revolve around how you get around obstacles, whether it's immovable objects or enemies or environmental, quandaries. So basically, you can move on an XY axis, right? The kind of interesting part of it is that, let's say you're in a room that's a square. If there's nothing impeding your movement, if you get to the top of the square and you push up, you kind of do a Pac-Man thing where you disappear up at the top and you reappear at the bottom of that row, or that column, I should say. And same thing from left to right. From you can if you go all the way to the left of a screen, if you hit left, you'll appear on the right, in that same row. And a lot of puzzles are built around this mechanic. And it's really interesting because it has you thinking about space and traversal in a kind of, not backwards, but sort of wormhole kind of way. Everything kind of folds in on itself, especially since the way combat works, as it were, is it's not combat in the like Final Fantasy, we go to a combat screen kind of way. It's like you don't have any inventory in this game. It's like if there's an enemy on screen, then somewhere on the screen there is a sword on one of these squares, and it's your job to manipulate that sword. So if it's on a row left to right, you have to be on that row, and when you move left, it moves that sword left one square with each step you take. And so you can move it over to a certain square, and if you want it to move up, you have to get underneath that sword and then move that column up so that it will then collide that square with the sword on into the enemy. It's very strange, but very satisfying, because every screen that you're on becomes a puzzle in that, like, how do I not only get to the exit that I want to get to, but how do I use the tools that are available to me to get me to that point? And what I like about it is that there's no obfuscation here, which can happen in some puddle games, in some puzzle games, where I think of something like Fez isn't the best example, but Fez comes to mind because it's like there's all these secrets you can find, right? And with a ranger, it's like it's all on the screen, and as long as you kind of understand the mechanics of the game and are able to kind of and willing to do some trial and error, most likely you can find the answer. I should say I'm not too far into it. Maybe like 4 hours into the game. I don't know how long it is, but it's been fairly doable. I found some side quests, for lack of a better word, that have been tricky, where the game made it very clear to me. It's like, if you don't want to do this now, you can come back and do this later. I'm like, okay. So there's going to be some kind of there's going to be opportunity to traverse some previously run through areas. So I'm just kind of making my way through the game at the pace that I want to, with the understanding that it seems like it's going to let me to come back and do some challenges that I didn't have the patience for or found too difficult to do. But it's all that combined with a very cutesy, interesting aesthetic that has a timbre of morose sadness to it. Everything is kind of this, like I said, this is where it reminds me of Bastion. I think it's Supergiant Games that did that game.
Right.
There's kind of like a loneliness, a quiet quality to it that permeates the art direction and the writing, that keeps it from being too schmaltzy. Because like I said, the writing itself, the story itself is a little on the nose, a little kind of cheeky, a little too cheeky for its own good. But it does have this overall sort of somber quality that keeps it from being overly saccharine to me. And so it's very appealing. I'm still very early on in it, and I don't think I did a very good job explaining it, but if it sounds in any way interesting to anybody listening, I would say go not just check out, image searches, but watch some video of it, and you'll see kind of the strange mechanics that are going on in this game that are, if it's your thing, it's super engaging. And for a person that generally likes puzzle games but can be off-put by maddening, obfuscated mechanics, I'm finding this really engaging. I know I told you about it earlier in the week, going like, I think you should check this out. I don't know if you have or not, but it's
on my list.
Like something what's that?
I have not yet.
But I know you were into kind of like you were into Braid when that came out, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's and Braid operates on a very sort of obvious and not obvious, but very clear mechanic. And I think this is doing the same thing. It's not doing the same thing that Braid did, but the mechanic it's using is very clear and seems very focused. Like if you and this is what I liked about Braid, even though I didn't complete it. But like, okay, I know all the solutions are here in front of me, right? And I just have to figure it out. Braid worked on the sort of time mechanics, right? A rewinding kind of thing. And this is just working with playfield and going like, what options are available to me to get my character to get behind the thing it needs to move, or to get around the thing that I need to get around. Because I guess you should say that there are objects that are infected by the static in this world, and that can prevent you from using that mechanic of like going to the top of the screen and reappearing at the bottom. It's like, it's basically an obstacle. And so you have to find your way to work around that. And there's always kind of like it's an interesting loop. You get into a screen and then you kind of figure out what can I do and what can I do, and then just kind of piecing together the path you need to take. And it's really interesting because there are a lot of tools it drops on you throughout the game so far, whether it's combat, whether it's, you know, gates or bridges, for lack of a better word. It's really interesting, and it's captured my attention in a way that I haven't really had that part of my brain scratched for a while. And something I hadn't realized is a kind of itch I've been looking to scratch for a long time.
Well, it's good. I mean, honestly, those kind of puzzle games and those games like that, like sometimes they just work, you know? They really hit, and it's unexpected, but yeah. I'm glad I'm excited to take a look at it. I'm just in the midst of another game right now that I'm not going to talk about.
Oh.
That rhymes with oxygen not included, so.
So a game you've been playing for 10 years?
I know, it's just funny. Well, it's new DLC came out last week, so now it's like, oh.
You talked about like you had a non-disclosure agreement. You're like,
no, it's
a game
just
I can't talk about
like
right now.
I'm back on a game that I put not thousands, but countless hours into, and here I am putting more. Yeah.
With that in mind, like I'm getting very near the end game of Midnight Suns, and I'm very much enjoying it. Still, despite it being, I don't know. I feel like I should feel ashamed of playing Midnight Suns to the level that I do, but it's a fun game. I enjoy it. I will say before we go, I will not say very much about this. I did see Deadpool and Wolverine, or Deadpool and Friend, if you will.
Deadpool and Friend.
I won't talk about any spoilers, but there's two things that came away from watching it, thinking. And again, spoiler free. This movie is made in the context of the post Disney Fox merger, right? Mm-hmm. And right. That's what the movie's about. I would honestly say, on a meta level. But also, like, just people have been worrying. I wasn't one of these people about like, oh, you know, will Disney force them to soften the edges of Deadpool, whatever, right? The opening scene of this movie, understanding like that Fox was trying to, you know, kind of carve itself a place in the comic book world post the MCU, with the first two Deadpool movies, and having merged with Disney and knowing kind of the tone of the Disney-based MCU, the opening scene of this movie, I'm like, how did this get made? This is insane. And it's glorious, I should say. I will say, for anybody that's still worried, if my opinion means anything, which it doesn't, it is as irreverent as Deadpool ever was in those previous two films, and is, I would say, the best movie of the three. But the thing I really took away from it is that it's really, I'm using this word in the classical sense rather than the modern sense. It is kind of, its argument is as an apology for the Fox films, the Fox Marvel films, right? And I'm not going to say too much beyond that, but like, it's not an apology, not as in like, I'm sorry for it, but the classical sense is it's a defense of them. And I wasn't spoiled for it, but I did see a tweet from Ryan Reynolds, or maybe it was an Instagram post, before I saw the movie, where he did say like, this movie couldn't happen, and everything that we know about superhero movies couldn't happen had not X-Men been released in 2000 and been the phenomenon it was. And so he's like, I'm not going to go into this new era of Deadpool and not say that the last 20 years under Fox was meaningless or bad. Like, it's important, and I appreciate it, and he loves it, right? And so everything from, you know, the story of the movie to even the post-credit sequence, which is not. They have I should say this. There's two post-credit sequences. One of them is very meta and reflective, and actually kind of touching. As I should say, the entire movie. It's a very emotional movie, and very well acted, very well written, and very, as I said before, reflective. And when Andrew gets around to seeing it, maybe we'll talk about it again then. But it's a triumph, and I'm really surprised it got made, and secondly, very happy it got made. It's a wonderful film, despite being very crass, disgusting, but also fun. So Deadpool 3, Deadpool and Wolverine. I get thumbs up for me. Claws up for me? Perhaps. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find Andrew on Mastodon at profounddark at dice.camp, and you can find me on Instagram at dbethelcomics.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. There you'll find our episodes simulcast in YouTube. If you do listen to the show on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music and more at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 Attribution License.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. I hope you don't mind. Kind of end very quickly on a little bit of Star Trek.
Okay.
Star Trek, beautiful. I apparently watched a very beloved and award-nominated episode of Deep Space Nine recently, that I was not necessarily prepared for, and made me feel lots of things that we watched. We went into this episode going like, let's watch Star Trek. We just got back from traveling and for 7 hours and being gone for a week, and like, let's just watch something nice and light. And then so we sat down and watched the episode of Deep Space Nine called The Visitor. And fuck me. Andrew, The Visitor is a powerful episode and is definitely what should be on a list of like, do you want to convert people to watching Star Trek? Then watch this. It's like the Blink of Star Trek in a lot of ways.
It's definitely on those lists of like top 10 or whatever. If you only watch 10 episodes of all Star Treks, right, it's probably one that you'd put on that list because it's actually quite good.
Yeah. If anything, because it gave another
more screen time for Tony Todd.
It became
this
a vehicle,
time without makeup on.
It became a vehicle for the wonderful Tony Todd. No bees coming out of his mouth in this episode. Only wonderful poetic character work.
I mean, he's been at that point. He's been in so many episodes of Star Trek. I like the idea that like, all right, Tony, we want you to be in the show, but not as a Klingon. He's like, I don't
know what to do here. Right. Yeah, no, he was great. Great episode. Watch Deep Space Nine. Watch The Visitor. Now I'm scared to watch any Star Trek because it could play with my heart, and I wouldn't even know. wouldn't be ready for it. So until Star Trek breaks your heart and scrambles your brain, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
You're listening to the 14th
We didn't
source.
clap.
Oh, yes. Good call.
We didn't clap.
You told me to go. What am I supposed to do?
Whew. Sorry, I'm taking a minute to sweat.
Take your pants off?
Already done, sir.
Hell yes.
81%.
That is a lot. Is it not raining outside?
It's not. No. It's
Wow.
Just,
It is about to. That is edging rain.
yeah.
Which is not the name of the episode. Yeah, I know, right? That's gold we left on the floor there.
All right, I'm recording now, so say some funny stuff now.
No, it's done. We can't recapture.
Oh.
My week in geek is I played an uncomfortable amount of Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
That is... Any amount is uncomfortable.
We'll cut that in at the end of the episode.
I don't
And Glenn's week in geek is...
Mr. Outtakes himself.
I'm a little gassy today.
Nice.
Got that recorded.